Next, we move to Manukau Beautification Charitable Trust.
Kia ora koutou.
Good afternoon and welcome. We've allocated 10 minutes for your submission. How you'd like to use that time is entirely up to you, but the floor is yours.
Kia ora. All right, kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to our submission today. My name is Sterling Rufio. I am the Community Programs Manager at Beautification Trust. I'm joined today by Louise Bovink, who is the Communications and Marketing Manager at Beautification Trust. Our CEO, Daniel Bartho, is unable to come here today, so he sends his apologies. We are a relatively small but determined community environmental hub dedicated to connecting and empowering communities to learn, love and look after the environment, especially in South and East Auckland. So while we're hands-on and making a difference locally, when something is fundamentally wrong at a national level, then we will also stand up and make our community's voice heard. The Beautification Trust opposes the fast-track approval bill. The bill threatens not just the environmental protections that safeguard our taonga, but also undermines the democratic processes of Aotearoa.
So firstly, the economic rationale for this bill is flawed. While the potential revenue has been championed by the bill's proponents, the enormous costs for our future generations, ecosystems, and New Zealand's reputation are missing from the economic equation. As mentioned in our submission, our country has unique biodiversity found nowhere else on Earth, which warrants the vigilant protection granted by our existing laws. Allowing just 3 ministers to override these essential protections for perceived economic benefits is a disturbing and reckless approach to managing our nation's most precious taonga. Our natural environment is a cornerstone of our national identity and New Zealand's national brand, adding immense value to tourism and exports. This bill would erode our global diplomatic reputation and export brand value as a leader in environmental protection and sustainability. Then there are the direct costs to communities. At the Beautification Trust, we operate in a developed urban area, so our experience with conservation and environmental protection often involves cleaning up after the fact. In South and East Auckland, many ecologically important areas have already been irreversibly damaged or destroyed by human activity. However, dedicated restoration efforts are being undertaken by community groups and volunteers with little, if any, government funding. So we speak here today to protect the precious biodiversity we still have left in our area and support all the other communities in Aotearoa, New Zealand, fortunate to still have their natural environment relatively intact. The Fast Track Approvals Bill is a fast track to privatise profits and socialise losses. Projects that bypass environmental protections risk catastrophic damage to our environment. And when that happens, who pays? Not the multinational corporations who have had their fill and moved on. Future generations of government, taxpayers, communities, and community environment hubs like ours, running on the smell of an oily rag and the goodwill of volunteers, will be the first called upon to pick up the pieces. This government promised to boost productivity and cut wasteful spending, so it should recognise the enormous waste of resources that would be required to fix the damage left by these projects. We have enough messes to clean up already, and we don't want any more, especially not those created by a government meant to support us. It's demoralising for our volunteers and community to have their hard work undone. Government operates at the highest level while we work on the ground, and we need to be in sync and working together for our common goals. In fact, we want an Aotearoa where our organisation isn't even needed because our environment is well cared for and resilient, and we're living within our ecological means. Recent deadly disasters like the Auckland Anniversary Weekend floods and Cyclone Gabrielle starkly highlighted the consequences of development that neglects nature. Because of poor planning and disregard for natural systems, Auckland's paved over rivers and wetlands left water with nowhere to go but into people's homes and businesses, causing multiple deaths and over $1.95 billion in property damage. These events remind us that environmental checks and balances and infrastructure planning are absolutely crucial, not only for our ecosystems, but for human safety and economic stability. Yet this bill seeks to undermine them. Effective planning involves understanding and integrating natural systems, engaging all stakeholders, and prioritising long-term sustainability and community resilience. The Fast Track Approvals Bill fundamentally contradicts these principles by allowing just 3 ministers to override comprehensive environmental protection, by excluding key stakeholders, including community groups and environmental experts. Not even the Minister for the Environment gets a seat at the table. And by prioritising short-term gains for corporations over long-term, sustainable, resilient development to benefit current and future New Zealanders. Henry Ford once said, "The only real mistake is the one from which we learn nothing." We must learn from our past mistakes. We must uphold rigorous standards and effective planning for development and environmental protection to avoid future catastrophes.
Speaking as an organisation who has a distinct expertise of being community builders, people weavers, and environmental connectors, we believe deeply in the power of community ownership of their local environment. So the Fast Track Approval Bill completely undermines civic engagement and takes away our community's collective voice. Recently, the Beautification Trust was contracted by Auckland Council to engage the community for shoreline adaptation planning around East Tamaki Inlet and from Buckland to Pine Harbour. We reached out to hundreds of locals, asking them to identify valuable spots along that coastline, and their responses were rich and varied. We had stories of long gone wharfs and lava caves. We had stories of children's favourite swimming spots and conservationists who could pinpoint exact bends in the river where endangered birds nest. Each participant highlighted the intrinsic value of their local environment. The tapestry of this community input was invaluable. It underscored the importance of civic engagement in planning and decision-making, ensuring that local voices shape sustainable and resilient development strategies. Through this process, it became clear that effective environmental planning must be rooted in the lived experiences and the deep connections of the community. Our council representatives couldn't hold the information of these few hundred people, so how can we expect 3 ministers to hold the entirety of Aotearoa's landscape in their 3 heads? Even with the expert panel recommendations, their narrow scope of knowledge from their offices in Wellington can't account for the lived experience of local people. This government strongly criticised the 3 waters for taking away community control of our natural resources. Then to introduce a bill which gives power to override environmental law and silence communities at the whim of the 3 ministers is the height of hypocrisy. We are your on-the-floor people. We love our community, we love our whenua, and we are telling you that this bill is disengaging people from civic processes. Our communities are already disillusioned and losing confidence in our government as an institution. This bill further threatens our people's trust and hope in the future as it erodes representation and the right to be heard.
In conclusion, we submit that this bill should be thrown out in its entirety. We could debate the detail of this bill endlessly, but the simple fact of nature is non-negotiable. If you protect nature, nature will protect you. Let us also remember that our actions today will define the legacy we leave for future generations. I'd like to leave you with some cautionary words from the late New Zealand ecologist and research scientist Jeff Park. New Zealand's fertile plains were the last to be found before the Earth's supply revealed itself as finite. Our relationship with them has been completely unsustainable. We have exploited these islands' richest ecosystems with all the violence that modern science and technology could summon. We must live with the rest of nature or die with the rest of nature. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. And we have a question from Steve, and then if there's time, from Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for your very powerful submission. I wonder, what do you think the sort of long-term impact is of a legislative framework that completely bypasses and ignores the local knowledge and expertise that an organisation like yours carries in terms of the political license or credibility of any given government? And secondly, how do you feel about the prospect of one of those core decision-making ministers being somebody who's explicitly said that they want to see mining proceed, even if it means the potential extinction of something like Archie's frog?
I think that it's incredibly short-sighted. I think that our communities are passionate and they tell us that they deeply, deeply, deeply value the things that people try and say don't matter at all, but we know that it matters to people at the local level. In terms of the framework, do you have anything to say?
I would just add that it's incredibly demoralizing for local people to have their voice taken away, particularly if they're personally involved in those volunteer conservation efforts. It just feels like all the hard work that you've done is being undone. And so I think those voices are really important. I would also add, I understand that the expert panel has the ability to call upon input from other people, but what I would say is that you don't know what you don't know. And so while the expert panel can choose people to comment on projects, without having the public notification to allow people to come out on their own accord and comment on these projects, you will lose valuable local insight and information simply because the expert panel may not know who to ask.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your submission. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you.